If you're just joining us, thank you and welcome. We'll get started in a moment, just making sure everyone's with us. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome and good evening. Thanks for joining us virtually tonight. My name is Maddie Walters, and on behalf of Harvard Bookstore, I'm pleased to introduce this virtual event with AIMEE Bender, presenting her new novel, The Butterfly Lampshade, in conversation with Kelly Luce. Through virtual events like tonight, Harvard Bookstore continues to bring authors and their work to you and others in our community during these challenging times. Every week, we're hosting events here on our Zoom, and as always, our event schedule appears on our website at harvard.com/events, where you can also sign up for our weekly email newsletter and browse our shelves from home. This evening's discussion will conclude with some time for your questions. If you have a question for our speakers at any time tonight, go to the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get through as many as we can. In the chat box during this presentation, you'll see a link to purchase tonight's book online for curbside pickup or delivery. All sales through this link support Harvard Bookstore, so thank you for your support during this trying time for community spaces like your local bookstores. You'll also find a link to donate in the chat box. Your purchases and contributions make this virtual author series possible, and now more than ever, supports the future of a landmark independent bookstore. Thank you for tuning in support of our authors and the incredible staff of booksellers at Harvard Bookstore. We sincerely appreciate your support, now and always. And finally, as you may have experienced in virtual gatherings over these last few months, technical issues may arise. If they do, we'll do our best to resolve them quickly. Thank you for your patience and understanding. And now I'm pleased to introduce tonight's speakers. AIMEE Bender is a professor of creative writing at the University of Southern California. She is the author of 6 books. These include The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake, which won the Skiba Award for Best Fiction, as well as The Girl in the Flammable Skirt and The Color Master, both of which are New York Times notable books. Her work has been widely translated and anthologized and has appeared in Granta, Harper's, Tin House, McSweeney's, The Paris Review, and more. Kelly Luce is the editor of the Commuter at Electric Literature and the author of the novel Pull Me Under, a Book of the Month Club selection and one of Elle's best books of 2016. Her short story collection, 3 Scenarios in Which Hannah Sasaki Grows a Tail, received an Indie Fab Editor's Choice Prize for fiction and was a finalist for book awards from the Texas Institute of Letters and the Writers League of Texas. Her work has been published in New York Magazine, Chicago Tribune, and the Oprah Magazine, among others. Tonight, they'll be discussing AIMEE's novel, The Butterfly Lampshade, which was praised by Oprah's magazine as a dazzling rumination on time and mental illness with wonderfully inventive fables in a very recognizable, walkable world. I'm so pleased to turn things over to tonight's speakers. AIMEE and Kelly, the digital podium is all yours.
There we go.
Hello.
Thank you so much, Maddie, for that great intro. Thank you, Kelly, for joining me, and all of you for being here in the way that you are here.
Yes, thank you, Maddie, and welcome, AIMEE. It's really exciting to talk to you. Personally, I've been a huge fan for my entire writing career, so it's an honor to be able to chat with you. I wish we were in person, but this is almost as good.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. I love your work as well, and I'm so glad that you were up for this. So, really a treat. Really a treat. And yes, in person another time. This is just the virtual version.
Yeah, we're getting warmed up.
We're getting warmed up. We're feeling it out. So
yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about the sort of general idea of the novel, what it's about, and then maybe we could do a little dramatic reading?
Yeah, Kelly has agreed kindly to read one of the opening scene with me. There are these different chapters in the book where there's just dialogue and there's no nothing else. So they lend themselves well, I think, to readings. And had we been in person, I think I would have tried to like find someone in the audience who was willing to do it. But
Or put a different hat on or something.
exactly, right. Instead, we get to do things co-hosted in these events, which is actually really nice for me. So, but what I'll just say, and the truth is maybe in some way launching into the scene gives us material to then talk about what the book is about, because I'm sort of bad at synopsizing, and you sort of get thrown in with 3 of the main characters of the book pretty immediately.
Yeah, this is literally chapter 1, page 1. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna do it. And they're like disembodied on the page. So if you feel disoriented, that's just the truth of it. All right. We cannot tend to her. There is something wrong with her.
What do you mean? What is wrong with her?
We do not know. Something.
She seems like such a normal little girl to me. Last visit.
It is hidden.
Did she do anything? Did she do something bad?
No.
Then what?
We cannot handle her. I cannot.
But what do you mean by that? Is she misbehaving?
No.
Is she getting in trouble at school?
You have to come get her.
I don't understand.
You are the godparents. You have to come. That is your job.
But you are alive, Elaine.
I'm telling you, I can't do it.
Where's that new guy you were telling me about?
Camping.
Is he coming back?
I don't know.
Are you going to do something, Elaine?
I could call social services. Maybe I will. Are they listed? Will they do foster care if another family is still available?
Can you put her on the phone?
No.
Is she nearby?
She's right here. She's looking right at me.
Can you tell her to come on the phone?
Francie dear, your Aunt Minnie wants to speak to you.
Hello, Francie?
Hello.
Francie, are you okay?
Yes.
You've been listening to our conversation?
Yes.
Your mother is very worried about you. Do you think you might be doing anything wrong?
No.
Have you been going to school?
Yes.
Are you behaving properly in school?
Yes.
Are you going to bed on time?
Yes.
I have to tell you, I'm more worried about your mother. Do you think she might be getting sick again?
Yes.
Can you tell me what she's doing?
No.
You can tell me. I know she's probably listening, but it's okay, really. She knew I would ask you. Is she hurting you in any way at all?
No.
Is she dressed?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Are you feeling okay?
Yes.
Do you need me to come up there?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Can you tell me what you mean by yes, as in why?
No.
Is your mom's friend there?
No.
He's out of town?
I don't know.
Is anyone else there?
No.
Is your mother hurting herself?
No.
Sweetie, I'm so sorry. I just can't come this time. Not right now. I'm too pregnant. I'm not allowed to go on a plane. Your uncle can, though. You want your uncle to come?
No.
Oh, Francie, who is the best grown-up for you to call?
It's me again, Min. She dropped the phone. She's standing by the wall now. She puts her nose right up against the wall. It's touching the wall.
What is happening over there?
Like she is talking to the wall. She has this look, Min.
Kids have looks.
No, other kids don't have this look.
Elaine, she can hear the whole conversation, for God's sake.
But she is judging me all the time.
Kids don't judge, not like that.
She does.
You're still on the Abilify?
I cannot be around her. There's something in her. There is a bug in her. I cannot even trust myself around her. Are you listening to me?
Yes, I'm sending Stan up the minute he gets home. Morning flight.
Not Stan, you.
I can't fly. What do you mean, a bug?
A bug in her, something crawling inside her.
Can she stay somewhere else? Where can she stay?
I don't know.
A friend?
I don't like her friends.
A friend of yours?
She loves her babysitter.
Ask the babysitter. Of course, tomorrow. Or I'll call her too. We can both call her, okay? This is the one who also works at the school.
Shrina.
I have her number. We'll work something out, honey. You have to call your doctor. We'll both call the doctor.
I know I should. I know I do.
And I will too. So that's a start. We have a plan then.
We do.
We'll both make some calls in the morning, okay? Let's go over the plan. What are you going to do tomorrow?
I'm going to call my doctor.
Good. And?
I'm going to call my doctor.
And if you feel able, ask the babysitter.
Right. And I will ask the babysitter.
What are you going to ask the babysitter?
She will take my sweet girl, Francie. But what do I mean again? Where will she take her?
You know what? I'll call Shrina. Don't worry about that. You take care of yourself. Maybe Francie can stay with her for a couple days while we get you feeling better. Do you know where she lives?
She's very young.
Francie?
Babysitter.
It's just until Stan can get up there. I'll tell her he'll be coming as soon as he can.
How many months are you again?
8.5. So that's the plan for tomorrow. But what about tonight?
Tonight. Exactly.
Does she have a lock on her door?
Her bedroom door? Yes, she does. She asked for that.
What do you mean? She asked for a lock?
Last year for her birthday.
You're kidding me. Did she ask for anything else?
Is that odd?
Just a lock.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, but okay. She's a smart girl. It's very useful. From the inside?
Yes.
And how about you?
We can both lock our doors from the inside.
Okay, you need to do that then. Why don't you do that as soon as we get off the phone? Use the bathroom first, then go to bed. You'll call me tomorrow morning?
Yes.
You'll call the doctor?
Yes.
You'll call me if you need anything, absolutely anything.
Yes.
Tell Francie goodbye. Tell her I love her.
You're on speaker. She can hear you.
Jesus. Goodbye, Francie. Did you hear that about locking your door?
Yes.
I love you, Francie.
She doesn't say I love you.
I will say it anyway. She doesn't have to say it back. I love you, Francie.
Bye, Min. Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too, Elaine. We'll figure this out.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too, Elaine. Go to your room now, honey. Good night. And scene.
That's seen. Thanks for reading that with me.
That was fun. I feel like we got into more of a groove as it went on.
Right. Yeah. Totally. That was our, first run.
Yeah. So now do you want to talk a little bit about
Sure.
the genesis of the novel and kind of the, not to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't read it, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the genesis is always a little hard for me to track because I spend a while with novel writing just sort of searching for characters that I feel able and interested to follow for a while, and that takes time to figure out. But when I think back on that initial process, one of the clues, because I really try to tune into language as a kind of guide, is I felt attracted to the word aunt, the A-U-N-T, aunt. And so I felt like there was some shift from mother and father. But there was an aunt and an uncle. And I was just drawn to those words and having a narrator talk about these characters, not knowing where the parents were. And so that was an initial mystery for me, was figuring out first, had they died? And I kind of have some scenes that explored that. But if, like, the way that I tend to work is just to follow where there is a natural momentum, and that will be where the story goes, and to really let go anything that doesn't have that kind of push to it. And the dead parents didn't work, like there wasn't that kind of flattened out, and that I didn't feel like writing it anymore. And so then it, like, when this scene happened in the writing process, I think it was right around when I was sort of cueing in to the mom as struggling with a mental illness that let her at this moment have to let go of being the primary caretaker of her daughter, and that it put Francie, the daughter, on a kind of multi-layered journey, process, whatever, to move to Burbank, where her aunt and uncle live, from Portland, Oregon. And that at the time of the book, figuring out that the voice did feel more like a reflective voice, that she was looking back at this time and wanting to really sort of relive it to a certain degree, but as with the time and distance, to be able to think about it a little differently than she did as a child, when we can process to a point and also not. So really wanting to kind of let those two times exist in her at the same moment.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So it sounds like you're saying that that you had Francie's character and this whole cast of characters, you were working on drafting them and their story. This is obviously chapter 1. This is where the book starts, but it's not the chapter 1 that you wrote, right? When you started. Where did you start when you were actually drafting?
I mean, it's this is my third novel that has held together as a novel. There are definitely other novels that are in the drawer, in the proverbial computer drawer.
I got that drawer.
Right. It's like, and it has so much gigabytes, the thing can hold many of those. So I think my process, or kind of what I've sort of learned about it, is just that I can't really know, like the drafting process feels much more meandery. So I can't really know even what that starting point was. The way I think of it or frame it is that at the time, early on, I had kids 7 years ago. I had twins, and I had very limited writing time. So for a while, I was writing just like little 10-minute blocks in a day. And then the 10 minutes, like their nap changed, and I could do 20 minutes, or, all these sort of differences came in, and that was really helpful. And so in those little 10-minute spots, I could kind of drop little ideas and little things. And that's where her voice came in, and the circling around this word aunt. And then also somewhere in there, that scene kind of dropped in there. So there wasn't, like, I guess I did have an image of a butterfly falling off a lampshade dead into a glass of water, but the image sort of floated in another scene that didn't work. And I didn't know that image would become central. And the sort of clue, or the way that I'll work, is I'll just want to circle then again around that image. The image itself will have a sort of potency for me that makes me want to revisit it and stay with it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious, with that method, how you populate the world. Do the characters, we have Aunt Min, we have Elaine the mother, Francie obviously is our main character and narrator. There's Vicky, who is Elaine and Stan's, or not Elaine, Aunt Min and Stan's daughter, who kind of becomes a sister to Francie. Do those characters sort of populate in the edges and then get sucked into the vortex as well?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's even, I think what's helpful about being able to read that scene is if you kind of know that scene emerged early, it was also teaching me things about the characters on the edges, in that there's Aunt Min on the phone, she's pregnant, and that's why she can't fly. Like, that reason just sort of emerged in the writing of the scene. But if she's pregnant and the pregnancy goes okay, then there's a baby, and the baby's going to be a different age, and that's going to be a person in Francie's life, and she ends up being a major player in Francie's life and a really important presence. So it's like there are these things that, you know, or Elaine mentions her boyfriend, who then actually disappeared and like clearly didn't get pulled into the vortex and actually spun out, you know, and wasn't going to be involved at all. But I always feel like there's this interesting process in writing classes. We talk a lot about like adding detail and looking around and making the scene more alive and whatever, but there's a million things in the world to pick. So you naturally, you know, unconsciously make choices. And those choices, if the scene, you know, if the glass the person picks up feels like the right glass, there may be more information further down the line to discover about that glass that they're drinking out of that gives you more about the world of the character. So I feel like it's like the writer is planting seeds for herself in the process of writing. And then part of my job, which is not like I'm doing it, you know, with any regularity, but that I'm trying to do, is to just tune into to what I've placed without realizing, to try to read freshly.
Yeah, I love that. That resonates with me and the way I approach writing. But I feel like I've heard a lot of teachers say things like, well, outlines are important and you really need to like get your plots and your 3 acts. And I get the sense that you are not really an outliner, someone who's trying to, you know, come up with your story and then impose a 3-act structure or something on it. It's much more intuitive. And that's just, I think that's what makes your short stories and your novels unique and unlike anything else that's out there. That's not a question, but it popped into my mind when you were describing your process. You brought up the baby, Vicky, who does, you know, get born healthily and, you know, lives in the house with Francie, and they end up having, you know, a pretty positive relationship, which, and I wouldn't call this a fairy tale by any stretch. I would say it's a realist novel with maybe a little tinge of not even magic, but kind of like a real deep look into the magic of human consciousness, which is not magic at all, really. There's a lot of mystery there.
So much mystery.
But I think the stereotype or the go-to would be to have that relationship be really contentious and have Vicky and Francie be at odds, the evil stepsister trope.
Right.
And did you consciously kind of sidestep that, or how did the relationship between those two come about?
I mean, I think Vicky really looks up to Francie, and Francie sort of comes from this more difficult past, and that I think Vicky finds very inspiring, but is also distant from, and grew up in greater stability. And I think Francie loves Vicky for the stability that she feels from her. But I think it's also, they're both foreign creatures to each other to a certain extent, and they're also very close. So I think that I did sort of imagine, this was in some ways deliberate, but I think I just felt like I had my hands full with the conflicts that come up around different ways, the different sort of planes that we live in, or the different perceptions of the world, and that the conflicts between the sort of more kind of, you know, evil stepsister kind of conflicts felt like they would be distracting from that sort of conflict with how one perceives the world, and does it feel like a perception that can fly or not, you know, meaning like can work, can function, can exist. We just, Pete Rock wrote this beautiful novel, My Abandonment. We just watched Leave No Trace, which is just an extraordinarily beautiful film. And it's about this father and daughter who are in the woods, and the people around them are all quite kind. And there's so much strife within the dad, who's a vet dealing with PTSD, and there's so much love in all the people. but the strife is there in a different way. And it was just a beautiful thing to see that. I so recommend both the book and the film. Anyway, but I think just thinking of that idea of where does conflict lie and when does the writer want to sort of take it on, and in what way and what sort. And I just to go back quickly to your thought about the outlining, I think I have tried outlining and it has never worked for me. There's a book that has Meander in it by a woman whose first name is Jane. This is a horrible, I'm sure though it's Googleable, but it's about this idea of plot as, can it be a sort of meander, whirl? She talks about it sort of the kind of whirlpool circling. And I certainly feel like there's so many ways that something can take a shape. And that if a story just needs to take some kind of shape, it can take a very clear, like structured shape that we understand and we move through and enjoy, or it can be a more kind of fluid, intuitive shape, and that we really need both, and we need practicers of both kinds. And a lot of people are going to be a combo, but I do think I'm pretty far on the sort of intuitive side, simply because also I actually can't do the other one. It just doesn't, I don't know how to do it. I've tried.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It makes the decision easier.
Right. That's true. That's good.
I think it's harder to write a novel that is a spiral than is a mountain with a cliff and the denouement. It's more reflective of real life. We go around and we kind of have to face the same challenges again and again in different guises, and maybe we make 2 steps forward, 1 back, and we kind of face our demons in different levels all the time, and it's hard to reckon with that in a novel or in prose, because you only have a sentence at a time.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I think this novel captures that in a really smart way, that the way it's structured it's kind of like a journey novel, which is, a very traditional sort of thing. But the way you've done it is that Francie is going on this journey in kind of her adult life to remember this period after she was removed from her mom. Yeah. And she goes about it in a very specific way. She has a procedure. She creates a tent and she goes into it and she kind of like meditates, or I don't think she calls it that, but we get the story through flashbacks they're technically flashbacks, I guess, if you're in a writing class, but they don't feel like flashbacks because she's re-experiencing them in the now. So there's like 2 parallel nows. Right. And that to me just really hit home as like, that's really what it feels like to be alive and have memories. That's nice. I'm just fangirling out here. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, when you were writing and, structuring a novel like this, you have your intuitive process, but actually ordering pages in a book is, you have to impose that structure on something at some point.
Yeah.
Talk about that process.
In some ways, the book is all about, and so many ways that I think is all about that balance between a kind of creating a structure within which you have space and freedom, and that she makes a literal tent structure that she can sort of feel safe enough and enclosed enough to touch memories that are difficult and at a time that she was kind of emotionally removed, to try to like let those memories seep into her in a different way. And I also, it definitely has a parallel to how I write, and that I write in a very set box of time. And I've made very strict rules around the amount of time for the purpose of being able to go in as deep as I can, and also know that I'm going to stop, which has parallels to the therapy frame, which has parallels to just all the different ways that I think structure. It's just frightening, I think, to dip into chaos and to sort of encourage that. And yet I feel like the making of anything requires that. So I feel like there's something like Maggie Nelson once talked about how she needed to make formal choices about what she was writing about so that the content would flow, because she was occupied with thinking about form. And so that sort of, maybe that's connected to the critical part of the mind too. I don't know, but but so then she could go into content that might be emotionally frightening otherwise. So, but yeah, I think then, like, I really like the revision process, because then in sort of going over scenes, trying to see like, well, what scene has a flow into the next scene and what isn't necessary, and what are ways to shape this now that I have a certain amount of pages and there seems to be some kind of movement. What is the movement? And at the same time, like, I really appreciate what you said about the memories, the flashbacks feeling like part of her present, because I think they are, and that is how I feel about memory in general too. But it did feel like a little bit of a gamble, because it's not the drama. I felt drama in her desire to do this, and so I was banking on that idea that there would then be readers who would also experience drama. Like, if the writer feels it, some readers will feel it too, whereas other readers understandably will be like, she's sitting in a tent, but she's sitting in a tent very actively,
Yeah, no, and I think that was one of the most spectacularly successful things about this, is that you have scenes where there's only one character sitting and thinking, and they're gripping. And it's so hard to do that. Yeah.
No, it's really like,
good job.
No, but it's nice to hear.
And I mean, I think, we can all relate to that. It's really hard to get on the page in a novel and have a reader experience that. So
it's interesting though, because it feels like it's it just, I continue, there's an exercise I'll give to my class about expertise, like, and the idea is everyone is supposed to write 10 things they're an honest expert on. And the difficulty is getting people to really not think honestly like they know and they're hiding it, but to actually consider what things, like if there was a panel on, this topic, they would be on that panel. And I remember really vividly, and like someone was like, my mother's self-loathing, my boyfriend's, basketball habits, like all these different things. And someone said, like, this was like 10 years ago or whatever, it was like the Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt children. They were like, everything about this family. And I really loved that they revealed that there was like a celebrity expertise and fascination that they had, because there's just no doubt that if that writer took time writing about whatever she thought about that family, there was going to be so much in there. And that if you actually put your eye on the thing that you feel like writing, that's where the goodness is, in terms of like, that's, I think, where it gets sort of a potency. And I find that really interesting, because I think there is sort of a pressure to feel like you're supposed to write about a certain given thing as the content. So I think that was I just like that idea of being with her and seeing what that was like.
Yeah, going all the way down, like to the very bottom turtle on the stack.
Right.
It could be anything at the top, but once you get down there, it's endlessly fascinating, because we're all just like skimming the truth of like universal knowledge, or what it means to be alive.
What it means to be alive.
I'm going on to a much more shallow thing. Like, I really love that Francie's job as an adult is like buying stuff at garage sales and estate sales and selling it on the internet. Like, she lovingly cleans stuff up and kind of like gives it a new life and sells it all around. And she, talk about detail, she really goes into, you could feel her passion for like saving this old, scarf and cleaning it and sending it to a woman in El Paso. And it's a very also like 2020 kind of occupation for a young person to have, like, just gonna quit my, steady minimum wage job and do this instead and see if I can make a go of it.
Yeah.
Have you done anything like that? Like, do you garage sale? Do you?
I don't much, but I do occasionally, and it always feels like it's so interesting. Like, the objects are so interesting, and I think I'm also kind of interested in the process of like, what do I see if I look at a table of things that have been like in other people's houses? What are the things I gravitate towards that maybe are familiar to me? And what are the things I don't see? Like, what do you naturally skip over? And if someone was like Francie and could sort of see the things that might be really special and kind of hidden, what would she find? And I think like Walker Percy writes some about objects, or he writes about closets, and he's like, that feeling when you open the closet and you're like, I have nothing to wear, is obviously not true, because there's clothes in there, often, various types of clothes. But we've seen it all so many times that we can't see it anymore. It's like the familiarization has overcome some kind of seeing. And so he talks about like, how do you sort of increase that? How do you refresh our sense of things? And I think with objects, it's so true that even with very precious things that I love that are around the house, I don't look at them. They have disappeared into their spot. And so I think she was much better at me than that, at really being able to sort of locate those things and reclaim them. And then, but I do like the idea, like with children, when you have an item and then the item they've grown out of it, there is a great pleasure in the passing on of this particular toy to the next person in line, the sort of conveyor belt of life. So I do feel it in that, like I really enjoy selecting an object for a person and passing that along. That's fun.
And Francie is, I don't know if this is in the same category, but she is, just as a child, has that very tangible physical sense of connection to the world. And that plays into the title of the book, right? The Butterfly Lampshade is a physical lampshade that her babysitter has, and she like kind of gets fixated on it, right? And then something really weird happens. And do we talk about it?
Sure. We can talk.
Okay, so correct me if I have it wrong, but she sees this lampshade when she's at her babysitter's house. She really gets kind of obsessed. She wants to have the lamp. Her babysitter says no. And she just really kind of focuses on it a lot. And eventually a butterfly physically falls off into a glass of water. She drinks the water. The butterfly has become a real butterfly. It's not just a silkscreen thing. And so that process of like becoming real and like interacting with her in the real world happens a couple other times with a couple other items, like a beetle on a piece of paper and like roses printed on a curtain in the book. And that is it's the only kind of like weird element. And there's, not necessarily an explanation for it. Mm-hmm. And I love that there's not an explanation, I guess, that, that the ambiguity of the psyche and consciousness and the way that childhood memories can seem very real. Like I have a couple weird things that I remember as a kid, and I wonder, you're the parent of twins, and we were talking before this started about interesting things kids say or remember and then forget that they even knew when they're growing up. Do you have experiences like that yourself, or have you experienced something like that with your kids where they thought, here's the normal world, and then this completely impossible thing happened? That's normal too. And then I just kept going, and you're like,
right.
Wait.
I mean, I remember we were driving on the freeway the other day, and my daughter was like, I saw a giant by the side of the freeway, but no one else had seen it. And then it was just very important to her that I believe her. And so I believed her, like she was like, it really was, there was really a giant. And I was like, okay, and I think it's just, I feel like things can be strange and distorted. Anxiety can be so strange and distorting, like I think of times where I felt really anxious and I felt like my head was floating up, and it just felt like, I know my head's not floating up, but I'm having this really acute sensation. And like, what is that? Like, that's just, maybe it's the feeling of just feeling like your head, I didn't feel kind of attached to myself at that moment. And so yeah, I mean, I think with children, and I remember this in childhood too, there's also just so much sort of magical sense of the world and things talking and creatures being real and everything could be a creature, you know, like suddenly like a little tiny piece of a chicken nugget will be like, you know, look, there's a wolf on my plate, get this piece off my, you know, and just things have this sort of intensity. And I think that I really remember that feeling, and I'm sort of watching it again as a parent, and I find it so, it's both so touching and so interesting. And I also have sympathy for it because it's also can be totally overwhelming because you don't have perspective yet. And so, yeah. And the moments in the book, I think I did want them to, like, I wanted them to be witnessed by at least one other person. So we knew it wasn't entirely in her head, but then I didn't really know what they meant. I just felt that they were the right things that were happening. Like they felt right. But I always feel like then I'm just supposed to focus on as much sort of physicality as I can to make it as real as possible on the page, and then let the thing go. Because if I was trying to put meaning on it, I feel like it would just be a guess anyway, because I don't know. It does feel like it bubbles up from a kind of dreamlike space. And at the butterfly, she never actually sees it fall out of the lampshade, but she sees the lampshade and then she looks away, and then there's a dead butterfly in a glass of water and a likely space, but the lampshade is so kind of populated, it's hard to tell. And I think I also felt interested in that rupture, that space of so many stories that we love, where Corduroy the bear walks up the escalator and is like a walking stuffed animal, and Woody and Buzz Lightyear, you know, doing their thing when the kid's out of the room, and how pleasurable that is. And yet somehow I wanted to like nestle it right up to a character who is dealing with psychosis and isn't able to distinguish at certain moments in her life between reality and fantasy, and to just let those things live next to each other. Not that they're similar, because I don't think they are, but also there's a relationship to be had about the way I think we think about those blurred lines. So yeah, wanting those mysteries and those strangenesses to just live on the page up next to different kinds of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and that they happened at a certain time in her life, and then there was a sort of lingering one in high school, and then they were gone. So whatever those were to her were specific to a certain phase of growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I don't think there's going to be any more in Francie's life. Like, I think that's true. And that's in some ways a loss, but also probably a relief.
But there's something she can always hold on to, and there's not much in her life that she necessarily can.
Yeah.
So that's,
yeah.
It's subtly done, but yeah, oh my goodness, look at the time. We need to take some audience questions.
All right. I see.
Let's see. Can you see them too?
Yeah.
The one. Okay, great. The one is, I'll read them so everyone who can't will have the benefit of knowing. Valerie asks, did you spend a lot of time determining the design of the chapters?
Design, I'm going to guess, meaning like length or order, maybe. I don't know if we can.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe the order and like just what goes in them, since they jump around in time a little bit.
Right.
Valerie, if you want to follow up, feel free.
Feel free.
The order. She says the order.
Yeah. I mean, I would say actually, yes. In some ways, that's some of the most amount of time is both then looking at the pages that have been written and trying to see if I'm not writing in a linear way, and this book is really asking to be not told in a linear way, then what works well next to what can get cut. For example, there's like a butterfly beetle and a roses, and there was a pear, you know, like there was a whole pear storyline, and that whole thing got brushed out because it just was distracting. It didn't really need to be there. And so I think of music a lot as a guide, just to feel like what is the rhythm, and also trying to feel like there's an emotional build, trying to tune into what's building emotionally, which is hard because I get so familiar with the material, and how do I keep it fresh enough so that I can feel it. But so sometimes it really feels exhausting, but then, then it's another day.
An anonymous attendee asks what you've been reading during the pandemic.
So what's funny about this one is I'm still reading War and Peace. Like I've been asked this and like, it's just War and Peace is just endlessly long, but I'm also, I just started reading Annie Dillard's Teaching a Stone to Talk, her essays. It's so beautiful. And I'm also reading essays and pieces of writing from The Fire This Time. Look, I'm right by my nightstand. So this is by Jesmyn Ward, put together this anthology as a kind of modern day response. And I'm going to be using this for teaching. So I'm going to be looking this again, Steal Like an Artist. This is a lovely little book, a lovely little writing book.
I really love that one too.
Yeah, it's just
like if you just need a kick in the butt to like get inspired or get back into your practice, whatever your practice is of art. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So the Walker person, Emma Walsh would love to read the Walker Percy piece about closets and defamiliarizing the familiar. Any chance you know where that came from?
Signposts of the unknown or something. The book of essays by him of Signposts. It's in there. And there's a couple of key essays, but one of his, this is not in that essay, but he has one called Loss of the Creature about teaching, where he's like, it's the same idea. Like, I feel like he circles around this idea a lot. Just like, what does it mean when you encounter a great work of art in a kind of staid, dull atmosphere so that the whole thing falls flat, versus like, how do we tap into the aliveness of the things that we're supposed to learn so that we actually learn them deeply? And that's a great short essay. So I can point you to that as a thematically similar one, but Signposts from the Something. Yeah. He's a wonderful essayist. He's very charming and very wise.
Anonymous attendee asks, your writing often focuses on a particular sense, such as taste or physical touch. Does this book have a similar lens?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, yes. But I think it's the sense of perceiving, which is all the senses feed into that, right? But I think I did feel really interested in this idea of how do we view the world? Like, what's our individual perception, and wanting to have a kind of different people from different backgrounds with different kinds of minds perceiving the world differently and living their lives differently, in large part due to that, and wanting to give them all kind of their fair shakes in their situations. So it's not like Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake, where it was so focused on taste, but I feel like all those pieces, yeah, I think it's trying to fold all those into similar themes, because writers, as they say, circle around the same book over and over and over again. Part of our deal. All right, I think the next one gets to be for you too, which would be great.
Oh, another from our friend M.O. Walsh, who has a book coming out now or very soon, awesome. Which I'm very excited about. Would love to know Amy and Kelly's process of going from novel writing to short story writing. They are each so excellent at both. Do they skip around between the two or get seduced by one form for stretches at a time?
Will you answer a bit first? I would think.
I actually kind of feel like I've only written one novel successfully, so I don't know how much experience I can go off of, but I feel like with novels, I can dip in and out, and short stories, I have to be able to focus. So it kind of depends on the circumstance of my life at this point. Now that I have like a family and like a house that needs a lot of work, and it's not just me in my cabin, the circumstances of my time management just dictate. If I have a lot of time, I will actually write a short story. And if I only have little bits, I'm more drawn to working on the novel. So, and it used to be different. So, things change over time, and I guess that's a good thing. You're not locked into whatever practice you have. But that's where I'm at right now. What about you, Amy?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the relationship of time to the form. And I think that there's something that feels true about that. And I think with novels, it feels like since it takes a while to work on a novel, I'll kind of be in it, and then I'll want to work on something else, and I'll basically have this set time to write, but then I can write whatever I want within that set time. So if I feel like starting a story, I'll start a story. And sometimes during that, there'll be a few things sort of on different burners, and it'll give the novel a break to work on a couple short stories here. And then I'll get tired of the short stories, and then the novel will feel kind of exciting again. So, yeah, I feel like that Norton Jester, who did the amazing Phantom Tollbooth, this is a rough paraphrase, but said something like, the real work happens when you're playing hooky from what you think is the real work.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like just you play hooky from the work as much as possible, and then some work happens, and then you have something, but it may not be the thing that you plan to be doing. So.
Another anonymous attendee says, one of my favorite characters you've written is Joseph from The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake. I've been thinking about him since I first read that book. I see so many connections between him and Francie. Do you? As a child, did you love/need to be alone or away from the world? You write about it so clearly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you to Valerie above too, about the scary scene. I'm glad it felt like a crime novel. I'm glad. Really good to hear. I got very attached to Joseph. And when you say that, there wasn't a conscious connection between him and Francie, but I was aware that, I can see it. And I think there's something about this movement from inanimate to animate that happens in that book, from animate to inanimate with him. And in this book, there are things that are trying to puncture that line and not succeeding and sort of arriving dead, but formed. And so there's sort of, anyway, there's a kind of cross-pollination with that too. And as a child, yes and no. I think I did like to be alone, but I liked being with people a lot. I have 2 sisters. I just loved following them around. I'm the younger sibling, the youngest. And so, but I think, I don't know, I do feel interested in that state of solitude. I think it's just part of how I perceive the world. I feel a little slow. I feel like I have a slow absorbing of sometimes what's happening, which I think can mean I'm a really slow decision maker on a menu. I have to want to think about all the things, but I feel like it can be helpful with writing and thinking about these characters. So, but I like the Joseph Francie connection, which wasn't obvious to me. So I appreciate you making that.
Next question from Joy.
Hi, Joy.
Hi, Joy. What's your writing practice been like during the pandemic?
Ha! Right. Well, my writing practice, Kelly, I'd be interested in this from you too. At first it was nothing. And then it went back to sort of thinking of having babies in the house. I'm down to some days it's 10 or 15 minutes a day. There was just a certain point, the first, 6 weeks was just how do we get groceries and what's happening? And then I felt I think I will feel better if I'm doing a little writing each day, because I just feel better doing that, even if I'm getting nothing done, just to designate the time. So I now have Mondays, 15 minutes before they wake up, and this day while they're having lunch with my husband. So they're little pockets, and I'm about to start teaching again, so I'll have to rearrange the schedule. But I do believe that even a tiny bit of time just makes you feel like you're participating in that part of yourself. And that feels better than not participating. So, better 5 minutes than no minutes. Kelly, what about you? How are you on that?
Oh, you just stopped me from needing 10 therapist appointments. All I need to do is 10 minutes a day. I've been doing 0 because I have a baby at home and I'm working full time and we can't do any kind of childcare. Her grandparents have watched her a couple times recently, so that's been great. But in terms of, just 10 minutes is a way to get back to myself. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that from now on.
with novels that sometimes a shorter amount of time is more conducive to novel writing. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
I just talk myself out of it. I'm like, 10 minutes, I'm not going to be able to get into it enough. You know, by the time I get warmed up, I'll have to stop. So I just, you know, I'm also a master procrastinator. I don't know if you have that problem, but
Well, right. It's,
uh,
yeah, I mean, I have to like force it to just be like, I must, there's, it's my own little autocrat.
yeah.
Yeah.
Audrey, hi Audrey, my Austin friend. I think that's who this
Nice.
Audrey Stewart is. You are amazing when it comes to writing sibling relationships. Do you have siblings or use them for inspiration?
I do have siblings. I have these two older sisters that have, are wonderful and are just a huge influence on me because they're great. And I really looked up to them. Like I just, admired them so much now too, but like as a kid, it was just overwhelming. I think that sensation of like, wow, these people, that I can sort of toddle around after. And, but the inspiration, I'm sure they're in the books in certain ways, but as is everyone that I'm close to and as is like everything. So it's never selected in my mind that even when I'm writing about siblings, I'm not thinking about my own siblings, but I'm sure there are pieces of relationships that show up, but they're just also connected to pieces of friends or husband or children or, like everyone sort of becomes a glob and then the character sort of emerges and then I'm in there too. So yeah, but yeah, I guess that's
A primordial soup of your life.
Exactly.
Felicia asks, has the pandemic offered a new role for a novel?
For the novel in
Maybe.
general, I'm guessing, yeah?
I'm not sure, Felicia, do you mean for the novel as like a form of art, or do you have an idea? Does AIMEE have an idea for a new novel based on the pandemic?
Oh, yes, correct. Maybe the form of novel. Oh, that's so cool. She just answered. Ta-da!
Nice. Yay! It's like she's really here.
It's like she's really
here.
She is. She's somewhere, right? Yeah, I mean, I think some people are reading, some people have less time for reading, some people aren't concentrating, some people want more concentration. Like it's all a mix, right? But I really believe in the novel and short stories as forms that we kind of need, and that it's going to be really interesting to see the work that comes out of this time, the work that's related to this time directly, but back to the primordial soup, the work that is indirectly related simply because you feel the presence of all these things that we're living through right now, and that we're all in this sort of process together worldwide, and what art being such a crucial way for us to think through experience. What will people make? Thank God they're going to make a lot of stuff because I think we need that. In Seattle. She's in Seattle. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I think it, how it changes, I don't know, but
yeah, it'll be really interesting to see, it goes way beyond obviously pandemic novels. It's going to be a wider scope of novels about everything, but they all have this one thing in common that we have no way of predicting right now, or like an underlying sense of chaos, or, who knows. An anonymous attendee asks, how has California as a setting influenced your work?
I'm from Los Angeles and I live in Los Angeles now, and I've almost entirely lived in different parts of California my whole life. And there's a great Borges essay on the Argentinian writer where he's like, if you're writing about the Middle East, you don't put a camel in the story, because if you're from the Middle East, because you don't see the symbols because you live in that place, in the same way that like there's no palm trees in anything that I would ever write because I actually don't see the palm trees anymore. So I don't really know is my answer. Is that California is so much a part of me, and I see, like so much of it's so baked into who I am as a person that I'm not totally sure how it's influenced it directly. But certainly, the landscape, I feel really interested in the plants and like learning more and more of the plants and the weather and just trying to articulate Los Angeles as a daily place as opposed to a glamorous place because, 10 million people live here.
All the plants except palm trees.
Exactly. Thank you. Good point. All the plants except.
What books were important to you as a child? How did they influence you? This is from another anonymous.
Great. And there were so many. There were loads. And so if I think of like the Madeleine L'Engle books, she had like a whole series about the magical kind of like philosophical, beautiful sci-fi books, The Wrinkle in Time, Austen family. I think that was, and then there was the other family, which was just like the real family, the realist family. And they were really interesting too. And I just loved all of those books. And I love that she did both. So if I think of that as like, and then if I think of the Baum's Oz books in particular as well, that when I read those now to my kids, I just feel like, oh, I'm just stealing his stuff over and over. Like his images are so fresh and wonderfully resonant. They're just so good. We know them all from The Wizard of Oz, but they're all over all the books and they're wonderful. So thank you for those great questions.
Yeah, I think we've answered them all.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you again, a huge thank you to AIMEE and Kelly for a wonderful night in. Thanks to all of you out there too for spending your evening with us. You can learn more and purchase tonight's book, The Butterfly Lampshade, through the link in the chat box. And on behalf of Harvard Bookstore here in Cambridge, Mass, have a good night, keep reading, and please be well.
Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Maddie.
Kelly, those were great questions, and I just love talking to you about it all. So.
I feel like we didn't have enough time to even scratch the surface, but hopefully we did.
Yeah, I think we totally did, and it felt good. It felt good to talk about it with you.
Yeah, me too. Well, I'm really glad I got to do it. So, congrats on an awesome novel. Good job.
Thank you.
Now you just have to write another one from scratch.
God, right. Haiku. We'll just be writing haiku.
Yeah.
We look forward to it.
Thanks. Thank you, Maddie, so much.
We'll see you guys.
Good luck, Amy. We'll see you.
All right. You too, Kelly. You too.